So today, we are digging into a massive story that's been making waves all over corporate Australia. A huge fine against the national airline Qantas. But the real story here isn't just about the money. It's about why they were fined and what it says about corporate power. Let's get into it.
$90 million. I mean, just look at that number. That is the staggering penalty Qantas has been ordered to pay. And this isn't for, lost bags or delayed flights. This is the price tag for illegally sacking almost 2,000 of their own employees during the pandemic.
All right, so to really get our heads around this, here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll look at the fine itself. Then we'll jump back in time to see what kicked this whole thing off. After that, we'll dig into the judge's pretty explosive verdict. We'll follow the money, see what everyone's saying about it, and then wrap up with the big question, is a fine this huge actually going to change anything?
Okay, first up, let's talk about the penalty itself.
So here's the bottom line. The federal court said Qantas broke the law. Simple as that. And we're not talking about a small mistake here. The sheer number of people they sacked meant the court had to come down hard, like one of the biggest penalties of its kind in Australian history. So how on earth did we get here? Right? To really get why this $90 million fine is such a big deal, we've got to go back a few years, to 2020.
Yeah, this was no quick slap on the wrist. We're talking about a grueling 4-year legal battle. It all kicked off in 2020 with those sackings. The union took up the fight and they went all the way to the High Court, which in 2023 basically told Qantas, nope, your appeal is denied. And that opened the floodgates for 2 huge financial hits this year. $120 million in compensation for the workers and this separate $90 million fine as a punishment.
Okay, so this is the real kicker. Why was this illegal? The court found that, look, this wasn't just some tough business call they had to make during the pandemic. No, the main reason they did it was to stop these workers from being able to negotiate for better wages later on. It was about crushing the union's bargaining power, and that's what made it illegal.
But it wasn't just about the law. The judge in this case, Justice Michael Lee, had some, let's just say, very strong words about how Qantas acted through this whole thing.
This line right here is probably the most scathing part of the whole verdict. The judge basically says, yeah, I hear you saying you're sorry, Qantas, but I'm not buying it. He called it the wrong kind of sorry. The kind of sorry you feel when you get caught, not the kind you feel for actually hurting people. And you know why he said that? He pointed to this massive contradiction. On one hand, you had the new CEO out there in public offering sincere apologies. But at the very same time, Qantas's lawyers were in court arguing against giving those workers any compensation at all. It was that hypocrisy that the judge just wasn't having.
And he really hammered home, but this goes way beyond a paycheck. He said that when you illegally take away someone's job, you're taking away a piece of their human dignity. And that's not something you can just fix with a press release.
So when you put it all together, the picture the judge painted of Qantas was, well, it was brutal. He found that this wasn't some mistake. It was carefully planned by senior management. He figured the only thing they were really sorry about was the damage to their reputation, not the people whose lives were turned upside down. And he said it revealed a really deep-rooted, toxic culture when it comes to industrial relations. Okay, so we've got some big numbers flying around, right? $120 million here, $90 million there. It can get a bit confusing, so let's follow the money and see where it's actually going. Right. This is super important to get. There are 2 totally separate piles of cash. The first one, that $120 million, that's compensation. That money goes straight to the nearly 1,800 workers who were sacked. It's for their lost pay, the suffering, all of it. But the $90 million, that's a penalty. Its job is totally different. It's meant to punish Qantas and be a warning shot to other companies thinking of doing the same thing. And when you look at how that $90 million penalty is being split up, it's pretty wild. $50 million of it is going straight to the Transport Workers Union, the TWU. Now, why would that be? Well, the judge pointed out that the official government bodies, like the Fair Work Ombudsman, didn't seem to want to touch this case. So the TWU had to step up and take on this huge financial risk to fight Qantas. The court basically said, you took the risk, you fought the fight, you deserve this. As for the other $40 million, well, that's still up in the air. So, as you can probably guess, when this all came out, the reaction was huge. People were fired up. This comment from a Reddit user really sums up how a lot of people felt. There was so much anger pointed directly at the former CEO, Alan Joyce, since this all happened on his watch. People felt like the folks at the top should be paying out of their own pockets. The head of the TWU, Michael Kine, He was right there with the judge, not buying the apology. He basically said, look, Qantas is only sorry because they're being forced to pay the biggest fine of its kind in Australian corporate history. He thinks it's all about the money, not about any real regret for what they did to their workers. And for a lot of people watching this unfold, the lesson was crystal clear. This other Reddit user put it pretty bluntly. This whole thing is being seen as this giant win for unions. It's like proof that when workers band together, they can take on a corporate giant and win, especially when the official channels don't step in. All right, so this leads us to the big one, the million-dollar question. Or, I guess, the $210 million question. Is this fine really the massive wake-up call it's supposed to be?
Well, let's look at what the judge wanted to happen. He was very clear. This wasn't just about Qantas. He wanted to send a shockwave through every single boardroom in Australia. The message? Breaking the law to make a profit will cost you. Big time.
But, and this is a big but, here's where things get a little murky if you look at the numbers. Okay, so the total cost to Qantas is $210 million, right? That's the compensation plus the penalty. But get this. According to documents from the case, Qantas expected to save $125 million a year from this outsourcing move. When you do the math, the savings pay for the entire fine and compensation in less than 2 years, which leads to this more cynical but maybe more realistic take from another person online. So did Qantas really get punished? Or did they just pay what amounts to a cost of doing business? They knowingly did something illegal, took the hit, and will still come out way ahead financially in the long run.
And that's really where we're left. It's the central question of this whole story. Was this $210 million penalty a true deterrent that will stop this from happening again? Or was it just a calculated business expense for Qantas? A big one, for sure, but just another number on a spreadsheet. That's the crucial question at the heart of this entire saga.